This is such a really true delight. It feels like a homecoming of sorts, as Mark said. So thank you to Mark and to Rebecca, who was actually my mentor in some of those programs in Yesod and to Ferret. So it feels just delightful and special to be with you all, kind of longtime participant, but first time leader here today, and so honored to be here. So it really feels so special and so kadosh. So maybe we'll just take just a quick moment. I heard Rabbi Jennie Solomon recently kind of talk about the sit before the sit. So maybe just to take in and to arrive from wherever you're coming from for this sacred moment, this carving out of space and time. So we'll just take just a couple of breaths together. Wonderful. So here we are, as we often are, in a time of transition, in a hard time for many. I heard recently someone describe this as in times such as these, or maybe it's always times such as these. It feels like that at this time, but it's a time of shifting, of moving, of turning and returning to Shuva, as we say in our tradition. So we're moving from winter to spring, from Pesach, Passover, or maybe you celebrated other holidays, but this time of holiday and holy day back into regular time, into more mundane and routine time. We're moving from Shabbat and its taste of the world to come into the rest of the week, into looking to the next Shabbat. And we're also moving from liberation onto our path of redemption. One of my teachers, Dorothy Richmond, who was here the other day, talked about this near constant Havdalah, which I thought was such a lovely phrase, this time of separating and merging these pairs and dichotomies. And on our Jewish calendar, we have another ritual, and Mark alluded to it at the beginning of this sit at this time, which is the counting of the Omer. So on these days between the beginning of Passover and our liberation on Shavuot, our redemption, between the liberation of Passover and our redemption on Shavuot, in those 7 weeks of 7 days, those 49 days, as we move from freedom, from liberation to redemption, we take in and honor different attributes, different sephirot or midot, different qualities and characteristics to notice and embody and perhaps set as kavanah before letting them go, like all things, as we do. So that's a very brief overview of the Omer ritual just to orient us. I know IJS has some lovely programs that delve a little deeper into that if you're interested. But last week was our first week of counting the Omer as part of that ritual. And we heard some lovely teachings here on Chesed. The first week was Chesed, loving kindness, loving connection. And perhaps you were here for some of that around soaking in and allowing love and that loving connection to abound within and outside. And now we're moving to Gavora, which I've heard defined many ways as strength, as boundary, as a sacred no, as a wise limit, a laser beam, a container. And I love all of these terms and the ways they intersect. And I confess, when first realizing this week was Gavora, feeling some challenge. I think it's hard right now to think about strength and might as a place of support, a place that's wanted or needed right now in our world that feels very hard, very walled, very concerned with shows of strength already. So I had some feeling of why would we want to encourage more might, more wall at this time when love seems so sorely needed and softness and connection so lacking. And because our tradition is so beautifully wise, so heart-filled, and this with strength within strength and structure, there's metaphors upon metaphors and layers upon layers. And within this counting of the Omer ritual, there are Sephiroth for each week. This is the week of Gavora. And there's also Sephiroth for each day. So today is the day of Chesed within Gavora. So as we move into Gavora, we're moving from the week of Hesed, and we're starting out with a day of Hesed within Gavora, which feels really special. It feels like the divine, the universe moving us slowly, mercifully and gently from that pure, abounding love to Gevura of strength and discernment, kind of a mini taste of Tiferet, which we'll get to later in this cycle, which is that balance of love and Hesed and in Gevura. So I felt into this a bit more, and I realized this Hesed and Gevura, this loving connection and strength is all around us. And it's really the answer to a question I keep asking, maybe some of you have too. And what I started to see was how needed Gevura is, how infused with love, with Ahava and Hesed. And I began to feel Gevura and the Hesed within it as a river and its banks, and how those banks are part of the river, really just as important a part as the water. How the water is just a puddle or a flood, even if it's made of love, how it needs those banks as much as the water. And maybe because of this time of year, I've been thinking of Miriam on those river banks, pushing a baby Moses, into that water and hoping and seeing that river as filled with love, knowing and trusting that it could contain and keep and protect that love and hope and promise, and how the riverbanks were just as important as the water to keep and hold Moses and to keep and hold us. And thinking of Miriam taking up that timbrel to sing praises for the wonder of God as we are finally free, as we cross the sea, our strength and salvation out of Egypt, out of Mitzrayim and those narrow places, and on to the beginning of our next journey. Because maybe Gevurah looks like a channel through the sea, an absence of water sometimes, even when that water is made of love. A wise, discerning restraint that saves us, that makes a path through the water, through the sea. And so I started to see Chesed and Gevurah everywhere. It's in our liturgy, it's in the Hafta, the blessings that are part of our most sacred Shema prayer, where we are commanded to love God with all our might, so that loving through strength. And maybe it's the answer to that question I keep asking of what do we do in a time like this with the world as it is? How do we act when we're broken and weary and so angry? And I've heard a lot of wise response that I'm realizing now is this very concept of Hesed in Gevurah. So my teacher, Tara Brock, introduced me to the work of Roshi Joan Halifax and this concept of strong back, soft front, staying open to love, to connection, to compassion within the confines of strength and support. So this deeper dive, this digging into the well, that sacred no, infused with love and focus. And maybe it's the key to compassion and to wise, loving action that may bring some hope. That laser beam, that digging deep and focusing, that channel and container for boundless soaking love, soaking in it, as we heard last week about Hesed. So Gevurah, I learned, might be about the way that God empowers us through strong love, and perhaps how we empower ourselves and those we love in our broken, beautiful, holy world, even when that doesn't look like what we thought, because sometimes the love is channeled or needs to slow down so as not to flood. So I have an 11-year-old, some of you know, and she started middle school this year, and this whole year has been one of shifting as she navigates so much change and the independence that's coming so much more quickly and so much differently than what I thought might be challenging, that has she has sailed right into it. And the metaphor that's in my mind a lot is waiting in the vestibule, waiting in the hallway. Because one day, pulling up and preparing to drop and roll on, as is suddenly the way now, she asked me to stay instead. And she didn't want or need me in the room or to help with the things that were harder in that day, but she wanted me near. And so that's what I did. In the hall, in the lobby, sometimes walking circles in the parking lot where she was at dance, and telling her the same things I tell to myself when I'm needing that hesed, that ahava, that loving kindness. I'm here and I'm not leaving. And I was, but I also wasn't. I was outside in the hallway, in the parking lot, catching glimpses of her pirouetting or laughing with her friends as I passed an open window. And maybe I will sometimes still solder up those riverbanks for her or help her discern how to do it if she asks. And maybe when she digs into that well of Hesed and feels her river rushing, the love that I'm putting and sending for these hard days will be in there with so much more that her current is gathering and cultivating and rushing with right now. Because maybe Chesed is a beam, a current, a rush from a faucet turned all the way into the channel, this wide opening of Gevura, allowing enough space for what's needed without overflow. The essential firmness we need in our lives to put the love of Hesed into action is how Rabbi Tirzah Firestone puts it, to allow that flow of Hesed to be channeled usefully, to nourish us well. No benefit can be derived from an abundance of flowing water with nowhere to go. So establishing Gevurah in your life is shoring up those riverbanks, putting in canals, maybe channeling that downpour into a riverbed to contain and carry that flow. And so now we'll turn into some time for practice to be with that. And there's an invitation to feel into, to be with this Gevurah, to continue to be with those riverbanks or whatever metaphor might speak to you of containing and protecting, and perhaps that chesed inside, like a turning on of the faucet, a current or beam on your path, within this channel of Gevurah, wide enough to hold this hesed, this love, and to protect it. So I invite you to find a posture, whether that's adjusting your seat a bit or moving in the room, perhaps lying down or standing. And you might want to do, as I like to do, some simple grounding as we prepare to sit. I like to kind of look around the room before closing my eyes or taking on a soft gaze. So there's that Gevurah coming in, orienting, providing a structure, maybe noting items in the room with your senses. I like to kind of feel and look and take in. So I'm noting a table and a book and the chair that I'm sitting on. So grounding in that Gevurah, the safety and keeping, protecting what's here. Just take a minute and be with that. So we continue settling in, perhaps picking an anchor, continuing to feel that Gevurah, how it holds and protects, and maybe beginning to feel that warm light of our Hesed, our loving connection within that strength and that support of Gevurah. It's a both and. So maybe selecting our breath, just in and out. or the sounds as they come and go, or the weight of our seat on the cushion or our hands on our lap, or bringing them to a place that maybe needs some more Gavora, some more strength and support. I like to put my hand on my heart or on my belly, both. Just trusting that your wise Gavora will discern what the right anchor for you is in this moment, and that it will serve to anchor, to channel as thoughts and feelings come and go, to feel into what's needed, what's speaking right now. As we continue to sit with Gavora, with the channels our wisest, strongest selves are making, to channel our hearts, our compassion, we're invited to feel into it just a bit more. What's the taste, the feel, the smell, the texture of our own personal Gavora? What messages might it have for you? And these might not be concrete words or thoughts. They might be sounds or song or words in a different language. So we're just noticing and taking them in, what messages are present. Now, if you like, if it calls, looking into, feeling into what the beam of Hesed inside Gabora feels like. What is its texture? Is it warm or cool, jagged or smooth? And what's allowed to emerge in your deepest, truest Hesed Your sense of compassion and love and connection is supported and held and channeled by your wisest Gevura vessel. What comes through from deep in your well of Hesed, an internal true goodness, just listening and allowing as thoughts and feelings come and go, holding what emerges, what remains, kept and held by Gevura, infused with Hesed and loving connection. Ozi Bezimratya Vayahi Lishua Ozi Bezimratya Vayahi Lishua. And with your eyes still closed, if they were closed, listening to these words from Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, who some of you may know as the Velveteen Rabbi. This is called Song at the Sea, a psalm of transformation. Can you still hear the song of the sea? Remember the melody soaring? We all walk together, my hand on your shoulder. You gained a new name in the journey. Remember the melody soaring? You carried your ancestors' bones and gained a new name in the journey. Sing now the song of your wholeness. You carried your ancestors' bones. Sing peace for the cousins who bicker. Sing them the song of your wholeness. Reveal your yearning without fear. Sing peace for the cousins who bicker. This is the gift, a channel with walls. Reveal your yearning without fear. Pour out your love. The container will hold. This is the gift, a channel with walls. Don't let the wonder recede. Pour out your love. The container will hold. How did you feel when the waters parted? Don't let the wonder recede. We all walk together, my hand on your shoulder. How did you feel when the waters parted? Can you still hear the song of the sea? And when you're ready, in your own time, we'll come back together and I'll turn it back over to Rebecca. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jennie, for that beautiful teaching and practice. Really a gift to have you with us today. And we turn now to an opportunity to recite the Mourner's Kaddish to seal our practice. So if anyone is in a period of mourning or observing a Yortzeit, honoring the memory of a loved one who has passed today, you are welcome to share the name of your loved one in the chat. And whoever is reciting the Mourner's Kaddish today is welcome to rise to join me in body or spirit as we recite these words together.
Yikadal,
Kadash,
Shemay,
Rabba,
Biamal
Amal
Divrach,
Divrach,
Yurte,
Yurte,
Bachawi
Israel,
Machol,
Bechol,
Alavisman Kavivi Machol,
Shemay
Rabba
Rabba, Mavrach, Olam,
Bikaman,
Ishtabach, Shakal, Tila, Shmei Kudish, Ri,
Shirata, Shirata, Venechamata, Miran, Beelma, Aish, Mama, Rappa, Mayim, Chaim, Aleinu, V'Yakol Yisrael, Imru, Amen. Shalom B'Rama, Asa Shalom, Aleinu, V'Yakol Yisrael, V'Yakol Yoshvei Tevel, V'Imru, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today, as always, to come together in community to practice. For those who have to leave now, we send you a blessing. Hope to see you at the same time tomorrow to continue on this week of practicing with Gevurah, with wise discerning boundaries. And all are also welcome to stay on now for another 15 minutes to ask Jennie any questions that arose for you about her teaching or practice instructions today, or if you would like to just share any reflections, any insights that arose for you in your practice, you're welcome to do so. And you can do so by just sharing in the chat. If you have a question, please preempt your share with the word question in all caps so that we can see that. Thank you so much again, Jennie. And I could just get the conversation started here. Just something that was coming up for me in my own contemplation of that balance between chesed and gevurah that really, as you so beautifully described, like the banks of the river allows for all that love to get to where it's going. And I know, for myself, and I was even just reflecting on Jewish practice and how my own practice with it, Jewish practice, also, mindfulness has evolved over the years. And that element of discipline feels important, right? That's like the gevurah that really makes a container for something to move and flow and grow. And yet reflecting on my own life and even just kind of the emergent nature of our changing world, there's also a way in which the discipline that's needed or the practices that are needed to build that container evolve and change, right? It's like the gevurah itself, even though it's strong, it's not rigid. And I'm just curious if you have any wisdom for that or reflection on that as well. And, if we start to feel like a structure isn't actually quite holding what we need it to, how do we engage in that discernment of when the Gevura itself also kind of needs to change.
Yeah, yeah, that's a beautiful question. And yeah, there's so much to it. And I think that is, and maybe particularly on this day of Gevurah, infused with Hesed, where Hesed is given a particular focus in today's Sephirot and today's practice of counting the Omer. I think that flexibility, that wise discernment, but infused with love and softness. And I was thinking I had some other words that I um, cut out of the talk for length purposes, but I was listening last week kind of on the counterpart to my talk. I think you were actually here too, Rebecca. Rabbi Susan Leader gave some beautiful teachings. She kind of had the inverse or the flip of this practice. She was in the week of Hesed, and it was infused. She was speaking to infusing that with Gevurah. How do we infuse our love, our Hesed, our loving connection with that discipline, with that Gevurah? And she talked about kind of a deeper diving, and she introduced me. She cited work by David Kane, making sure I get the name right, who had this beautiful metaphor of a rain barrel and kind of collecting all the concerns of the world, which I know we're all feeling. I'm here in Washington, D.C., I'm a federal employee. There's a lot going on in the world. I know that we're all holding in our personal lives and in the world. And I thought this teaching was so beautiful of this rain barrel that would collect all the concern, all the suffering, all the hurt in the world that we all want to bring our hearts and our compassion and our love to. But his concept, his metaphor was, what if we could parse that out a bit more? So instead of millions of us caring about all the issues, taking in everything, which is where that Gevurah, I think, sometimes comes in, that wise no. I heard it as a sacred no, that we can't take in everything, although some of us try. And then what happens is maybe you have millions of people caring about an issue for minutes or seconds or passing fleeting moments, even though their hearts are really there and want to be there. And so his concept was maybe instead you could parse out each issue to a few, maybe thousands of people, or maybe just hundreds of people who would dedicate a decade or a lifetime to caring about that one issue, which, it seems like that could bring some challenge too. And in our busy worlds, we all have lives and worlds that are hard to devote that much attention or focus. But I think that spirit of what if we could really focus in, and the way he put it was instead of feeling so helpless about the state of the world, which really spoke to me because I think I do, that's that question I keep asking of how do you um, how do you bring to the world when there's so much that needs our love and our hearts. So I think that focus, and I think what you said is really beautiful, just allowing that it can change, that it may not be the same thing today. And even in our practice, what anchor is speaking to us today, what structure. Maybe today is a day where we have 2 minutes to practice instead of 45 or an hour, and that might be what's called for today, or that's what's going to support until we can get to that place where we have a little more Gevurah. So thank you. I think, yeah, that's a beautiful question.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, and I love you bringing in, right, last week, what's that kind of nuanced difference between the Gevura and the Chesed, the discipline and boundariness around our Chesed, and then today, this idea of bringing that Chesed and also that love and greater flexibility into our Gevura reminds me of, I think it's from Psalms, this idea of being like a reed, as
Mm,
and also for like strength. So not so rigid that we're not moved by the winds of change, but
yeah,
also not, but like strong enough that we don't just blow over. We can bend and not break. And it's like
yeah.
our containers that hold the aliveness are also alive. It's all alive, right?
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful, that balance of strength and soft. And that's one of the song that I sang, the chant at the end. I saw a couple of questions to me about that. It's Oziv Zimrat Yah, and one of the translations, and I think I put it on my source sheet from Shefa Gold, who I know has taught here too, is, strength and song. So bringing, right, both that love and that strength. And I love what you're saying about the read. I feel like I've heard that teaching too of strong enough to support without without bending over with that. And I thought that was really interesting, the way that love can overflow sometimes, and that if you don't have those banks of the river, then you might have a puddle or a flood. That I think is very relatable in these times where I know I have felt flooded in these recent days and weeks and years. Times like this, like I said, where maybe it's always times like these, but yeah, that kind of bending and standing. So yeah, needing both. I think
Absolutely.
that's beautiful.
So we have some questions here in the chat.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Natasha is wondering, is there a list somewhere of all of those various translations of Gavora that you offered?
Yeah. I can make sure to get those all out. I kind of found them in different places. Yeah, I can maybe put I don't think they are on my source sheet, but I believe I can update my source sheet, so maybe we can make sure that gets back out to folks. That Yeah, they're kind of some are from our liturgy, or some from other teachers, and from yeah, just readings and teachings on the Midot or on the Sephirot in this time of counting the Omer. But yeah, some of them were um, yeah, strength, wise no, sacred no, I've heard. The riverbank metaphor that I used a lot. Um, Wise boundaries, discernment, and containment is one that came up a lot, which I thought was really interesting, because I started thinking about, in our songs, in the prayers that we sing to our children, about keeping and protecting. I think there's that element of the riverbank keeping and protecting that flow of the river, that heart of the river. Yeah.
Like the no that's actually in service to the yes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I see people are writing them down, which is lovely. So I'll try to group them too, and get them out to folks. But there's probably more too, right? Those are some of the ones that I encountered, but I'm sure we all could encounter a little more too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Some comments about just the beauty of this metaphor, rivers and seas and all that imagery. And also bringing in, yeah, I agree with that. The recommendation for this book, Dance of the Omer by Benji Elson, really
Mm.
incredible resource for the Omer that is totally based in the water cycle, actually.
Oh, interesting. I'm not familiar.
Um, yeah, the river and the flow of the water and precipitation, the just the whole cycle, rain. It's really, really wonderful resource. Yeah. Do you have a website?
I do have a website, and I will put it. It is a newly emerging website, so hot off the presses. You all are the first to get, besides like my daughter and my husband, to get the full thing. So I will put that in the chat. Um, yes, and I hope to have more offerings. I'm going to start a daily sit, or a weekly sit, probably not a daily sit, to begin with, and some other offerings, and hope to maybe be back here other sources too. So yeah, thank you for asking. I will put that in.
Well,
Can put the source sheet
um,
as well too.
some sweet reflections here. Hera says, there are times in my life when my boundaries may get porous and I can lack self-compassion. Your teaching today was a welcome balance to that.
Thank you so much.
And related from Esther. I'm also learning from my teacher, Kristen Neff, who's really an incredible teacher in this whole realm of self-compassion. The idea of tender and fierce self-compassion. Tender as you would hold a newborn, fierce like a mama bear protecting her cubs. The integration of the energy of Gavora and Chesed. Do you have any thoughts, Jennie, on that realm of self-compassion, self?
Yeah, there's so much there, and I'm sure we can and will have many teachings on that. I mean, I think, yeah, I tried to strike that balance in this talk about some of the ways that we can bring that to ourselves, our own personal personal Gevurah and personal Hesed that's within us, which I think is always playing out in the world too. So there's that balancing of bringing to the world, and I think that is part of this Hesed and Gevurah and this strong back, soft front that I know my teacher Tara Brock, who teaches more in Buddhist and secular settings, but offers this idea of the Martin Luther King quote of hate does not cease by hate, only by love alone, which is true, but you can't always start there, which was very helpful to me to hear that um, sometimes that's not where we're going to start. So you have to start where you are, and you can't bypass that that hurt or that Gavora or that wise no that really might be telling you something, and there might be messages there that are calling to you from deep, deep within that Hesed. So they're from a loving place, and they're offering you that Gavora or that no or that can't today in the same way that we can't take on, the billions of things on any given day that might cross our paths, both personal and out in the world, and that good that our hearts really want to do. And so sometimes that can feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I'm worried about this thing for myself when all's going on in the world. But that matters too. So yeah, giving to yourself, shoring up that well, shoring up those riverbanks before discerning what action you're going to take, whether that's personal or out in the world. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Beautiful kavanah for all of us as we go into our days and continue in this week of practicing with chesed, that self-compassion. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much again, Jennie. Really, really so wonderful and such a gift to have you with us today. Hope to have you back to teach.
Thank you all so much. That was really truly special for me, truly beautiful. So I'm very grateful to everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone, and hope to